Hey everybody, this is Rob and welcome to R&B Reviews and welcome to the Ask Rob video. Last week I invited you viewers and subscribers to submit questions and that I would answer them for this video, so I got quite a bit of responses, so I'm going to go through each one and answer them to the best of my ability. And just so you guys know, if I have a feeling I might ramble and tell stories while I answer your questions, so hopefully I can at least get to the gist of what you're asking me and stuff. And also, since today's my day off, I'm wearing my work. I'm staying in bed today shirt today. I'm not in bed, as you can see. I'm here with you guys. So I really thank you guys for submitting these questions and thank you very much for watching. So hopefully I give you the response that you're looking for. And I'm also, if you don't mind, once in a while I might stop and have a drink of my coffee while I do this. Alrighty, let's begin. The first question comes from Asia Extreme Infinity, and actually Asia Extreme Infinity submitted 3 questions. The first one is, are there any movies you wish you would have special edition DVDs and Blu-rays of? Honestly, not really. Honestly, I feel like sometimes some special editions and extended versions aren't always as good as the original theatrical release. Sometimes they are, depending on how much the studio took away and messed with. I do own a few of them. I own the Bad Santa special edition, but I feel like that one is kind of bloated in spots, and I feel like I can understand why scenes were cut out. I do own the Lord of the Rings Return of the King extended cut, but that's because I wanted to see Christopher Lee's final scene, which was left out of the theatrical cut. I also own the 1941 special edition. This is the only version you can find. You can't find the theatrical cut, but they added back a lot of scenes there. And while this isn't the special edition, I own the special longer edition of Star Trek the Motion Picture on VHS. It's 143 minutes, and I feel like even that one's a little bit long. I did watch the DVD of Star Trek the Motion Picture, which is 136 minutes, and that's the director's cut from Robert Wise, and that's the version I reviewed when I reviewed the 6 original Star Trek versions way back when. And so yeah, I mean, honestly, the answer to your question is not really. I mean, sometimes like I said, it's subjective. Sometimes the director's cuts are better, sometimes they're different, sometimes the theatrical might be better. It depends. Question number 2, which decade made the best movies, the 1980s and the 1990s, or the 1990s? This was a very tough question for me to answer because I was growing up in the 90s and I became more aware of the movies because I was starting to go to the theaters more, and I felt, I was seeing trailers for a variety of movies, like from family films to comedies to dramatic pictures like Schindler's List, Amistad, and when I think of 80s movies, I mean, I know they're not all like this. I usually think of the more upbeat, bright, fun ones like The Goonies, Back to the Future and stuff, even though I know that decade had its share of, dramatic pictures and horror pictures and what have you. And I also feel like with some of the 90s movies, I feel like they had better budgets. Sometimes when I watch the 80s movies, sometimes like if it's a special effects picture, sometimes depending on what it is, the effects might be laughable, but there are some decent ones, like for example the 1984 Ghostbusters. So I don't know, that might be me. I just feel like the 90s has more movies, more variety of movies that I felt like I was familiar with than the 80s. But the 80s has produced quite a number of pictures, so I guess I would go with the 90s. Question number 3, what would you consider the golden age of Hollywood or cinema in general? Well, with Hollywood, I would say the 1920s up until the 1950s. I feel like that's the golden age of where you had like the movies then were made during the Great Depression up until World War II, and I felt like there were more variety. There were it's interesting to see how different the films are back then to how they are now. I mean, they weren't necessarily trying to be realistic per se. They just wanted people to forget their troubles, and they had a variety of dramas, comedies, and what have you. But I do think that there was a bit of a second golden age in the 1970s where movies were a little bit more realistic and not as fantasy oriented perhaps as movies that were made in the 1930s. Like you had movies with Warren Beatty and Robert Altman that sometimes were a little bit more cynical, a little bit more satirical, and more critical about society than perhaps back then. But yeah, for me, the golden age of Hollywood would be the 1920s and 50s. And as for cinema, I don't know. I mean, I feel like every decade there's always some sort of artistic work by somebody that really stands out, whether it's Stanley Kubrick or something from Europe. I feel like there's not really a golden age per se. I feel like there's always something fresh, new, exciting, and challenging coming out no matter what country or decade. So yeah. The next question is Multimedia Assassin, and again, Multimedia Assassin submitted 5 questions. The first question is, are there any video games, comics, or novels you would like to see adapted into a movie? Unfortunately, I haven't played video games in a really long time, and most of the video games I did play when I was a kid were just like something like Super Mario Brothers or something where there's no storyline, you just go through the motions. And comics, I don't read too many comic books either, but novels, actually there's some novels that I would like to see either be remade or get adapted. Like one of them I'm actually reading now, one of them is called The Carpetbaggers. It was published in 1961, and actually there is a movie adaptation that came out in 1964. As a matter of fact, I borrowed that movie from my local library when I also borrowed The Black Book. If you want to check out my review of The Black Book, you know, it's on my YouTube channel. But the problem was, you know, it's a large book, and in the early 60s there was still stuff you couldn't really do that were in the novels. Like there's a little bit more sexuality, there's a little bit more about you know, adult content, let's say. I think this would be a very good this could be a very good streaming show like Netflix or something, where shows like The Last Tycoon and Z, the Beginning of Everything, which is the show that came out on Amazon Prime with Christina Ricci about the marriage of F. Scott Fitzgerald and his wife Zelda, where there was some adult nudity, adult content, and all that stuff. I mean, I think with streaming you can get away with a little bit more, because you know kids aren't going to dig around looking for adult stuff, you know, because there's a lot there. They're probably going to find stuff for their, you know, just for them. But I feel like with streaming you can get away with a little bit more than even network television and stuff. So I think this could be a very good series. There's a lot of good stories here, and I think it could probably be, if not a mini-series, then maybe have each chapter devoted as a season of the show. Another one that I would like to see is Chronicles of Prydain. The Chronicles of Prydain by Lloyd Alexander. Disney made a film called The Black Cauldron in 1985 where they took pieces out of all the books. There's 5 regular books and there's a prequel book, so there's 6 books altogether. What they should do, you know, if they don't make them into movies, then again maybe into a series for a streaming service, where maybe each book can be its own, you know, season. So basically, I think this series of books would have been perfect like over a decade or so ago, when fantasy films like Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, when they were making all kinds of fantasy films. I think this would have been a great time to make those movies, but that didn't happen. So that's another one. And also Confederacy of Dunces by John Kennedy Toole. It's got an interesting history. There's been attempts to adapt this into a movie, but for one reason or another it just it never happened. And there's also a so-called curse with this script, because actors like John Belushi, John Candy, and Chris Farley were attached to do it, but they died before they could make the films. And I know Will Ferrell did a what they call a script reading with actors, but that script never made it into a movie either. Question number 2, are there any movies you would like to see remade or rebooted? Now, I know over the years when I've done like a worst movies list, or if I review a movie, I'm like, this movie has good ideas, but it just didn't come together. When I read this question, I wish I could remember all those movies, so I had to go back and, you know, think. I mean, there were some movies that I was able to think of for this question when I read it. One is Father Brown, which is a book, well, it's a series of short stories about a priest that solves mysteries. There is a show running now with Mark Williams, but the problem I have with it is it's set in a small town, and with all these crimes, I keep thinking, you know, this small town where somebody is getting killed every episode, there's a crime, you know, it's probably not a good area. Because in the Father Brown books, and even the 1974 TV series with Kenneth More, he's always somewhere else when all these things happen. There was a movie in 1954 with Alec Guinness called The Detective. It was called The Detective in the U.S., but I guess in England it was called Father Brown. I think it would be interesting because I know there's some people who be like, why would I want to watch a pre-solved mystery? But I mean, I think if you have a character that's down to earth and likable, no matter, what, if you have religious beliefs or not, if it's a character that's likable, you can, follow him. And I think another problem I have with the Mark Williams TV show is I feel like some of the messages get forced, while in the Kenneth More show, it's a little bit more subdued. You get a sense of what's going on, but without it being shoved down your throat a little bit. And I know this is a weird one, but the Three Musketeers, I know there's been a lot of adaptations of it, but I feel like each one just doesn't quite get close to the book. Well, the closest one that I would recommend is I think it's a 1964 BBC production with Jeremy Brett that I would recommend. Another one is 1984. I feel like, if there's a play script that I've read, if I ever direct plays again, I would like to do 1984, because I feel like there's stuff that happened in the last few years I think I can use and make it relatable to an audience. But the movie 1984, there was a version made in 1984 with John Hurt and Richard Burton, and I know in 1956 there was a TV adaptation. I believe Peter Cushing was in that one. But I think, again, if it can't be made into a movie because it's too big, maybe it can be like a mini-series or something. And Logan's Run, there was a movie with Michael York, 1975, I think. And when I read the book, it was amazing how much the filmmakers changed when they did their script adaptation. But basically, Logan's Run is where you reach a certain age, I believe 30, and then you end up getting killed and stuff. You're asked to basically die so they can move on to the next generation or something. And right before I shot this video, another movie was Dark Shadows that came out a few years ago. That Tim Burton made with Johnny Depp. Now, Dark Shadows was a soap opera from the late 60s. My mom used to watch it, and I still have her cast album of music. And there was a movie adaptation with some of the cast in the early 70s called House of Dark Shadows, which I've reviewed on the channel. And I was really looking forward to this adaptation that came out in 2011, I think. And I watched it and I was disappointed because he tried to make the show comical when it was more of a serious, movie or a serious show. And I felt like there were too many characters. Like I still say Helena Bonham Carter's character wasn't needed. I mean, if you want to watch the video, it's on the channel. Well, I would like to see a more serious adaptation of Dark Shadows being made, kind of like the TV show or the two other movies, House and Night of Dark Shadows, that came out in the 1970s, and not really a quirky comical adaptation. Question 3, are there any unmade movies you wish were made or you would like to see materialize? Other than Confederacy of Dunces, one I would like to see is Atuk, which is another cursed script. It's basically, this screenplay was based on a book called The Incomparable Atuk by Mordecai Rickler, about a fish out of water Inuit hunter that ends up going to a city. I think it's Toronto, but I know in the script I think it got changed to New York. And basically it's a satire on racism, materialism, pop culture, greed, stuff that I think is relevant today. And the reason why it was cursed is similar to Confederacy of Dunces. John Belushi was offered the script first, but he died of a drug overdose. Then Sam Kinison, the stand-up comedian, was offered it and he agreed to do it, but there was a bit of drama. My understanding is he wanted control over the script, and I guess his agent promised that, but I guess it wasn't cleared with the studio. So on the first day of filming, he was arguing with the writer, the director, and stuff, and eventually he's like, I'm not doing the script as written, and the production got shut down. And of course, a few years later, he ended up getting into a car accident and died. And then John Candy was offered it, and he wanted to do it, and then he died of a heart attack while making a movie. And then they tried Chris Farley, and of course he died of a drug overdose too. And I guess it's been dead since then. But I think if they made the movie now, they would probably have to actually cast an Inuit to play the character instead of like John Belushi or a John Candy or what have you. Question 4, who do you think ran Disney better, Michael Eisner or Bob Iger? Now, I had to do some research because honestly, I paid attention to stuff that was going on with the company, but I never paid attention who was in charge. Michael Eisner is credited for expanding, into several new ventures like broadcast television, hotels, cruise lines, and store retailing and doing some adult-oriented movies, I guess, through Miramax and Touchstone. I also feel like during his time they were putting out more of a variety of films, like family live-action films that you don't see much now. But Iger, did do some reducing. He closed video game publishing. He sold Miramax. He refocused the company to be core family stuff. And of course, under him, we have the Star Wars, Marvel, and the Fox purchases, and the live-action remake of cartoons. But so, I mean, I definitely think, he's definitely focusing on stuff that people want to see. But again, I feel like we're not getting as, outside of Marvel, Star Wars, animated films, and live-action remakes, I feel like we're not getting as much as we had under Eisner movie-wise. Like, I remember, now, not all live-action movies that made were great. Like, I remember reviewing Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Bad Day with Steve Carell, and I thought it was pretty good, too. But personally, I guess it's what you're looking for. I guess I would go with Iger because I know he's doing stuff that people, like and want. But eventually, people are going to, with Disney Plus and the Fox acquisition and what have you. But eventually, and I'm sure people might be laughing at this, someday people are going to get tired of the Marvel movies and they're going to run out of cartoons to do live action remakes of, and they might want to start, if they haven't yet, start thinking about where to go from there. Because I know with Star Wars, I think that's kind of fizzled out somewhat with movies because, people were disappointed in how the new trilogy ended and the problems with the movie Solo. And I know they're trying to get an Indiana Jones movie off the ground and stuff. So, yeah, you have these established characters that people are familiar with and like. But, otherwise, once you run out of that, then you're going to have problems. So, yeah. But I would probably give a little bit to Iger, but I would say Eisner did some good stuff too. But they both have their pros and cons. And finally, don't you wish Warner Brothers, MGM, Paramount, and Universal would have made animated films like Walt Disney during the classic era of animation of the 40s, 50s, and 60s? Not really. Each studio, I think, had its own style. I actually like the Looney Tunes cartoons at Warner Brothers much more than some of the Disney stuff. I think the gags are better. I just think Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck are funnier than Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. I know at MGM they did have Tom and Jerry, and while it can be formulaic, the cat and mouse trying to outdo each other, they often had some clever gags as well. I know Tex Avery liked doing one-off characters at MGM, and he didn't like making a series. I know they made him make a series, Screwy Squirrel, to try to, compete with Bugs Bunny, but those cartoons I didn't think were that great. I think Screwy Squirrel is kind of annoying compared to Bugs Bunny, who I think was a better character. But yeah, each studio had its own unique style and it suited them best, so I would say no. Rico Canopy has some 8 questions. The first one is, what inspired you to make reviews? Long story short, back in 2008, I have to back up a little bit. Here in the United States, there used to be a movie review show called Siskel and Ebert, which was hosted by Gene Siskel, who was the movie critic for the Chicago Tribune, and Roger Ebert, who was a critic for the Chicago Times. They had a syndicated movie show. Now, I didn't watch it religiously when they were hosting, but once in a while, if there was a movie coming out that I wanted to see what their opinion was, I'd watch it. I think I watched it more after Gene Siskel passed away and Richard Roper replaced him. But then, of course, Roger Ebert got cancer. He left and eventually passed away. And Roper had different guest reviewers come on. And what happened was the company that produced it decided to get rid of Roper and decided to do an Entertainment Tonight style movie review show with Ben Lyons and Ben Mankiewicz. Now, Ben Mankiewicz is currently a host on Turner Classic Movies, and he knows what he's talking about. Ben Lyons, unfortunately, I felt like he didn't know what he was talking about. I felt like I didn't like how the show was all fancy and commercial and crap like that. So I said to my friend Brendan, why don't we do a movie review show in the style of how Siskel, Ebert, and Roper used to do it. And that's how we started doing movie reviews. We always tried to be informative. We tried to give our opinions. We tried to have a conversation. And I've tried to carry that on when I've done these reviews by myself. Of course, Ben Lyons and Ben Mankiewicz got kicked out after a year. And they did do one final season with Michael Phillips and A.O. Scott, which is closer to the old Siskel, Ebert, and Roper show. But after one season, it got canceled and stuff. But that's the story of what caused this channel to start. We wanted to do something closer to the old Siskel, Ebert, Roper formula. Question number 2, what is your favorite childhood movie? I guess Mary Poppins. That movie I always felt was a lot of fun. I was always amazed how they combined the live action and animation. Question 3, what's your favorite childhood television show growing up? Well, it's not a childhood show per se because it's a bit dark, but Batman, the animated series. I used to love watching that show very much. Question 4, what is your new favorite television show? I kind of hate to disappoint you, but I don't really watch TV anymore. I just don't have the time in my personal life to commit to a TV show because I work a full-time job. I've got some other things going on in my personal life. The last TV show that I tried to commit to was the TV show Sleepy Hollow, which aired here in the U.S. on Fox. I think it came out in the early 2010s. I watched the first season, but I ended up missing the last few episodes because I was busy with other things. I said, and at the time you could catch up on Hulu before they, charged you. And I said, okay, I'll just catch up later, no big deal. I never did, and then the second season started. I'm like, you know what, forget it, I'm not doing it. I think the only other show since then that I've caught up on, as you guys probably know, is the WandaVision show, but that's more of a mini-series. And actually, I wasn't going to watch WandaVision until Darren, my friend and frequent guest co-host, said, hey Rob, we should review this for your channel. And I said, okay, well, let's go ahead and do that. I still haven't watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier, although Darren and I are talking about doing one video after the show ends, catching up. And I know we're talking about maybe doing a Loki video every 2 weeks instead of trying to do a video every week, because it was kind of hard on us because the show would come out on Fridays. I work most Fridays, he doesn't, so I'd have to watch the show like when I got off work or early Saturday morning. We used to tape on Saturdays. I would edit it Saturday evenings into Sunday, and he would do all the artwork, and sometimes I wouldn't get the artwork till Sunday, and then I'd try to edit the pictures in and the artwork in, and then it would get up on Sunday, and of course that would be 2 days, and by then everybody else had a video up. I think Beyond the Trailers, she does her videos like she does them like that day. Most YouTube channels, I think, do the videos like that day, and unfortunately I just don't really have that luxury to do that, so those were kind of challenging. I mean, it was fun to do and it was different and everything. I think we talked a little bit more about the guessing and the fan work of the comics from a comic book fan angle, but it was a challenge to do. So unfortunately I don't have a new favorite TV show. I guess I would say WandaVision, but I mean, I liked it, but it's not my favorite TV show that I've ever seen in my lifetime. Question 5, what kind of toys and games did you play with as a kid? A lot of stuff. Legos. I used to have Ghostbuster toys. I had these things called Connects where you take these pieces, you connect them, and you made stuff like Ferris wheels and all kinds of stuff. I had board games. Those were just some of the stuff. Question 6, what's your neighborhood like? Well, I live in a cul-de-sac with 7 other houses. Now, some of the neighbors, have moved, but we were very close, so we knew each other, and we had block parties and stuff, but we've gotten some new neighbors in, and I don't know them very well, but I mean, it's a nice, quiet neighborhood of 7 houses. And of course, with every neighborhood, you get some drama, like you get a neighbor that's difficult and stuff. I mean, I won't go into details, but I mean, it's a nice neighborhood. Question 7, are you a dog person or a cat person? I would say I'm a cat person, and I'll prove it to you. Here's one right there. See? There's a cat right there. So I just feel like cats are a little bit more easier to take care of. With a dog, you gotta walk them, you gotta clean their crap up, and you have to have somebody watch them when you go on vacations. With a cat, you just leave the water, you leave the food, and they'll, they can take care of themselves. You don't have to take them outside and walk and stuff. At least for me. Obviously, if you're a dog person, obviously you're probably going to like dogs more than me. I mean, I like dogs. I just don't really feel like I got the time to take care of them like people that do have dogs, do. All right, and Rico's last question is, what are your thoughts on having a Patreon account? Okay, Rico, I'll be honest with you, when I first read your question, I did not know what that was, a Patreon account. So I did, for those of you that don't know, it's basically a membership platform that provides business tools for content creators to run a subscription service. It helps creators and artists earn a monthly income by providing rewards and perks to their subscribers. I guess this came out in 2013, and Based on what I'm seeing, I just don't know if I would have the time to commit to something like this. I think many years ago when I first started the channel, when I was working part-time and I could see movies every week and I could experiment and stuff like that, I think this would have been great for me. Unfortunately, I have a full-time job and other things going on. I just don't know if I got the time to commit to doing something like this. I wish many years ago, if I had been familiar with it, I would have loved to have tried it out. But yeah, I think with this point in my life, I don't know if it's something for me at this time. Next group of questions is from A Movie at Bedtime. Hi Rob, I remember in the 80s sneaking into my community center to watch 80s classic The Thing, which blew my mind, and seeing Back to the Future in 1986 in school, which made a real impression. Question 1, what film made a particular impact on a young Rob? Actually, when I was a kid, nothing. It wasn't until I went to college and took a film genres class where I started to get my eyes open more to a variety of films and learning about the different types of genres a little bit more. And like, for example, Harold and Maude kind of opened my eyes to dark comedies. I had seen dark comedies before, like, for example, The Opposite of Sex with Christina Ricci, but I didn't get it because I was used to seeing lighter comedies which weren't, dark stuff like Mike Myers, Adam Sandler and stuff, and it was a little too weird for me. Movies like Chinatown, which was full of symbolism and satire, and something like Goodfellas. I actually hadn't seen Goodfellas until I was in college. So those, later in life, when I went to college, was probably the period of my life that opened my eyes more compared to, when I was in high school or middle school or even a kid. Question 2, I know you're big on comedy films from the 30s and 40s. There doesn't seem to be many comedic actors in movies these days compared to, say, the caliber of 80s like Candy, Martin, Chase, Murphy, Aykroyd, Hanks even. Why do you think this is, and who do you rate of today's batch? And well, here's the thing, a lot of those comedy teams from the 30s and 40s, they perfected their act when they performed in vaudeville, which is basically live theater where you'd get a variety show each week, jugglers, comedians, dancers, singers, and what have you. And so they toured for years, perfecting their act. So by the time they got to movies, they knew their formula, they knew what worked, and actually, the performers that you mentioned, a lot of them came out of, stand-up comedy and improv, so, different backgrounds altogether. And something I notice with comedy stars today is I feel like they come and go very quickly. I remember when Jack Black was a huge comedy star when School of Rock, and he's still around, but now he's mainly doing character work, and, same thing with Zach Galifianakis. And I even remember Amy Schumer was heralded as the next big comedy star with her TV show, and when she did the movie Trainwreck. And while I didn't see the next couple of movies she did, I heard they were, terrible. And if they were terrible, that could have been one of the reasons they kind of bombarded her career a bit. But of course, she's married and she's, raising her son now, so that could be another factor. And Melissa McCarthy, I remember after Mike and Molly, she did Identity Thief and The Heat and all kinds of movies. And I know the movie Tammy she did afterwards, I felt like wasn't as good as the first two and stuff. I'm not sure if people just get tired of people faster now and want more versatility compared to the 1930s and 40s where the audiences didn't want their comedy stars to change at all. I think some comedy stars that I like now that are currently, performing, I like Steve Carell. I think he can do a variety of roles, so I'd probably go with him. But I think it could be that the background has changed. I do think audience tastes have changed. And question 3. Sounds as if I'm bashing modern day movies. I do enjoy modern films and occasionally get a big surprise, but I feel like the scripts aren't too good, neglected, and studios don't take risks anymore. You don't see many offbeat or different films being made like Ed Wood. Is there a particular genre you feel has been forgotten and you'd like to see more of? Not really, maybe mysteries, but yeah, I do agree with you that I think studios just don't take risks anymore like independent films do. Independent films, I feel like, take more risks. Sometimes it pays off, sometimes it just doesn't come together, but I would say mysteries would be something I'd like to see more of again. All right, next is Christopher Valencia. He's like, I did happen to see Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, a film Jared Griffith, I imagine, Griffiths has mentioned. Around the time I rewatched The Butler as well. Both excellent films. There's a movie called The Little Things I was surprised you didn't review. I was wondering if it grabbed your attention at all. Well, I haven't heard of The Little Things, but I have heard of Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. I haven't seen it. And I do remember The Butler coming out, but I remember when The Butler came out, like, this is the problem that I probably had with my YouTube channel. Because I'm full-time at my job, I don't always have time to see everything that comes out every week. That was probably the biggest problem I had with this YouTube channel. Unlike most YouTube channels like Schmoes Knows or Beyond the Trailer, where basically their YouTube channel is their career and it's their job. You know, they can see everything, they can do videos where they can watch a trailer and discuss what they've seen and stuff, and I unfortunately don't always have time to see everything that comes out. I know early on, the first few years I've had this channel, I was able to see more movies every week, but of course as I've gotten older and I've moved up where I work at and I've become full-time, it's gotten harder to do that. So I mean, that's one reason why when I do my best and worst list, I say these are from the movies that I've seen, because unfortunately, unlike a lot of YouTubers that review movies, I just do not have the time to see everything. But I'll see if I can get to some of these movies in the future. Tevye Smolka has 5 questions. Next up, his first question. I'm just wondering, what's your favorite video game franchise and why? Well, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I haven't played a video game in years. When I was a kid, it probably would have been Super Mario Brothers. I know the last time I played a video game was when I got a 360 and I played like the Hot Wheels game that came with it, and Guitar Hero. That Guitar Hero would probably be the last video game franchise that I played. That'd probably be one of my favorites, if besides the Super Mario Brothers. Question 2. Who's your favorite Marvel and DC Comics characters, and would you love to see a Marvel DC Comics crossover someday? I don't know if you mean movies or comic books, but I do know that Marvel and DC did make a few where some of their characters crossed over. My favorite DC character would probably be Batman, and favorite Marvel character probably Spider-Man. But I mean, if Marvel, I doubt it, but if Warner Brothers and Disney, you know, decided to cross over and make a movie, that would be awesome, but I doubt that's going to happen. But I do know that there are some comic book crossovers that were done. Question 3. What movies, video games, and have you read any comics in your life? Just wondering. Yes, I have read some comic books. I've read Batman. I actually have a Batgirl comic book where she fights Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy. I have a Robin comic book. I got some X-Men comic books. Yeah, I have read some comic books. What movies, video games? I don't really. I'm sorry, Ted. I'm not sure what the first first half of your question is, but at least the comic books, yes, I have. Question 4. I'm just wondering, any opinion on DC animated movies and any expectations on the upcoming Batman, Long Halloween animated movie, and what other characters would you love to have an animated movie? Because for me, I would really love a Super Sons animated movie someday with my boy Jonathan Samuel Kent, Superboy, and Damian Wayne Robin, but that's just my opinion. Honestly, the only animated feature film that I've seen was a movie that came out with Harley Quinn where they have to defeat Poison Ivy, and I can't remember the name of the villain that she's paired with, but he's like a tree character, and Batman and Robin have to track down Harley Quinn, and she's actually working at a diner, and they get her to come along with them and help defeat her old friend Poison Ivy. And they got the woman from Big Bang Theory to do the voice. I can't remember her name right now, but they got her to do the voice of Harley Quinn because I guess Arlene Sorkin, who did the voice for Batman the Animated Series, I guess retired. But that's the only one I've really seen. I really haven't seen any of the other animated movies. The only other ones that I've seen were, of course, Mask of the Phantasm, Sub-Zero, and then there was the Batwoman one that came out around the same time, and the Batman Beyond animated film. Those are the only ones that I'm really familiar with, so I don't really have any expectations. Oh, and I did see the one that they did with where they did the 1960s Batman show as an animated film. I saw the first one that they did. That one I really enjoyed. An animated movie I would like to see. That's a good question. I mean, I'll probably go along with you and want to see a Superboy and Robin team up. I'd like to see that. Final question. I'm just wondering, what's your opinion on the Snyderverse as a whole, and do you believe that the universe should continue or not? Because personally, in my opinion, as much as I like the Snyder Justice League movie, and I would like a sequel personally, I'm more fine with having good movies within DC Comics, but that's just my opinion. I have not seen the Snyder cut of Justice League. I don't have HBO Max, so honestly, I think it's too late to continue with the Snyderverse. I had a mixed reaction to Man of Steel. I felt like it had good ideas, but some of the artistic stuff he did, like the documentary camera zooms and crap, and him and the villains destroying Metropolis, I thought was a little bit too much. Batman versus Superman, I thought was a little bit disappointing. I thought it dragged in spots. So I guess my reaction to the Snyderverse is very mixed. I mean, I haven't seen his Justice League, but honestly, I feel like now it's kind of too late to continue. We've got Aquaman and we've got Wonder Woman, the movies coming out, and I think they're fine on their own without being connected to a universe. But and then of course there's going to be a new Batman movie, but it's not going to be part of the Snyder universe. So I'm fine. Basically, I'm with you. I'm fine with just continuing using the films as the characters, and they don't have to be part of a big universe like Marvel is. I think I'm not sure Zack Snyder was the right person to do it with, but I think Warner Brothers should not have panicked, with Batman versus Superman. They should have probably just let it go, and if Justice League ended up being terrible, then they could have been like, hey, we can start over again, right? All right, and the last group of questions comes from Jared Griffiths. I'm glad you're doing this again because I really enjoyed it last year. Here are my questions. All right, he has 4 of them. Number 1, what are your thoughts on when Dr. Seuss's widow, Audrey Geisel, put a ban on live-action Dr. Seuss movies after she hated the Mike Myers Cat in the Hat movie so much? Honestly, I didn't like either The Grinch or The Cat in the Hat. I think the thing is, Dr. Seuss's books are short. They're picture books. That's why I think they work better as cartoons, like half-an-hour cartoons, because you can keep them short and what have you. With the feature films, the problem is with The Grinch and Cat in the Hat, they had to come up with the studios or the writers had to invent stuff to fill up a whole feature film. Like The Grinch, they gave a backstory to, and The Cat in the Hat, I feel like they threw in some random stuff that didn't always have anything to do with how the Cat in the Hat really is in the book. So so I think she made the right call. I don't think Dr. Seuss works as feature films. And his next question, do you think there could have been some good live action Dr. Seuss movies if she didn't ban them? I think not, no. Number 2, what are your thoughts on the Laurel and Hardy, Three Stooges, and Abbott and Costello cartoon shows from the 60s if you've seen them? If you haven't seen them, what do you think of the idea of making cartoon shows based on those comedy teams? I have seen them. I've seen the Stooges cartoons more than the others. I've seen one episode of Laurel and Hardy and one episode of Abbott and Costello. I feel like it might do a good job at introducing kids to the comedy teams, but to me it's not the same as watching the team themselves in their films. I know this is kind of off topic, Jared, but with the Ghostbusters, I actually watched the cartoon show before I ever saw the movies, and so it was a good introduction to me in that aspect of it. I do know that, I think why the Three Stooges cartoon worked more was because, Curly Joe, Larry, and Moe were still alive. Laurel and Hardy were dead, I believe, when the cartoons came out. And with Abbott and Costello, Abbott was still alive and he was still able to do his own voice, but Costello had passed away by that point. So I think that's where the Stooges had the upper hand, at least with the cartoons. Number 3. Did it annoy you that Fred used to be the most subscribed channel on YouTube, when there was much better content on YouTube? Not really. I mean, I think, if there's shows on YouTube, which, pardon my language, probably has dumber content, most subscribers are going to watch it, no matter what. And not to sound egotistical, but I know I've had, people tell me that they wish I had more subscribers and more viewers because, when I review movies, I guess I review older movies more than other YouTubers. I might be one of the few that still do that, and I try to have clear, concise thoughts or what have you. But honestly, with me, I mean, I've never saw this as a career. I saw this YouTube channel as a hobby and to share my thoughts on movies. And number 4, What are your thoughts on the YouTube channels The Annoying Orange and Smosh, if you ever watched them? I've never seen Smosh, and I've only seen a few Annoying Orange shows, and honestly, Jared, they did nothing for me. All right. Well, I went through all your questions. I hope I answered them the way that you wanted me to. I hope I was insightful and gave you information that you were looking for. So thank you all for submitting questions. Thank you all for your thoughts. Thank you for being subscribers and watchers and viewers of this channel. I greatly appreciate it. I've said it before and I said it again. Without you, I probably wouldn't still be doing this now. So thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, well, you guys know the rules. If you like the video, please hit the like button. If you're not a subscriber and you want to be, please hit the subscribe button, and feel free to check out a variety of videos, old movies, new releases, contemporary films, TV show reviews like WandaVision on this YouTube channel. And feel free to give me any feedback, and thank you very much for watching.